The top 5 wins as we see it that have gone on here in the Trump administration.
Doge is a perfect place to start because this guy campaigned on changing Washington, and this is probably the easiest identifiable way that he is actually changing Washington in a way that no president before him ever has.
We finally beat Medicare.
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death.
Joe Biden's legacy for seniors? He raided Medicare, made premiums skyrocket, and drove up drug costs. Worse, the Biden pill penalty is already slashing the development of affordable drugs, forcing seniors to pay the price of Biden's failed policy. Biden broke Medicare, but President Trump can fix it. Call Congress and urge them to end the Biden pill penalty.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
You're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Good Tuesday, everybody. Welcome back to the Ruthless Variety Program. I'm Josh Holmes, along with Comfortably Smug Michael Duncan, John Ashbrook, left to right across your radio dial. It's nice to have a full cast and crew. Congratulations to Ashbrook and Smug on your recovery.
Yeah, back and better than ever.
Yeah, it seems like you're,
Yeah, it knocks you on your ass, but then you get up and you come back and fight.
Well, you missed sort of a big week last week.
Yeah, y'all held down the fort. I mean, the show rolls on. That's the thing is, we got a hell of a lineup and a hell of a team.
No question about it. A lot of thanks to Carolyn Leavitt and Senate Majority Leader John Thune for coming in for last Thursday's episode. I thought that was a banger. Really nice to see a couple of different iterations of what's important that everybody's seeing on the news and get it right from the source on those folks. It was great.
And I mean, you guys handled it so well. That was such a great show that we put out on Thursday, and all the thanks goes to you fellas.
Yeah, well, very kind of you to say. Remember, like and subscribe if you're interested in that and didn't hear it. Go back and take a listen. It's fantastic. Great. A lot of good information, a lot of discussion from Carolyn about how they're handling and why they're handling press the way that they are handling it. A lot of discussion from Thune about the accomplishments that they've already had and the accomplishments yet to come. And I think all of it provides great context in a very busy news cycle, which is happening by the moment. We saw the end of the last week, what could only be described as a unique Oval Office experience with the president of Ukraine encountering, shall we say, maybe a little different perspective than the one that he's used to.
Yeah.
And the president and vice president making sure that he understood what the score was.
That's right.
The previous president wasn't a shrinking violet, he was a half-dead violet. And this one is as strong as they come. And the idea that you're going to step to President Trump and expect to come out of there on top, get out of here. President Trump is leading this country, he's leading the world, and that kind of strength is what people voted for.
That's right. Here's a memo. This is not just foreign leaders, of which there are some that listen to this, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm told, reliably. But also domestic CEOs, people who are sort of kings of their own castle. When you're going into the Oval Office and expecting to have some kind of a negotiation with President Trump or Vice President Vance, maybe not pick like the alpha routine, because you're not gonna get that done. Like the idea that you're gonna walk in and be like, this is I'm the CEO or I'm the president and you're going to listen to me and I'm the alpha in this room. Like, dude, you're just not. It's going to devolve into disaster.
Right.
Which is what Zelensky saw. And like that, I mean, it should be obvious. I mean, I don't think that this is like psychology class. You don't need a master's degree in that to know that you're coming into his house. Mm-hmm. And this man is pretty used to being the alpha in the room. And you're in his house and you're asking him for something. Probably should be pretty deferential about things.
It only makes sense. I mean, you are in the Oval Office with the President of the United States. That's just the baseline.
Yeah.
That's the baseline of the situation, and you got a bad read on it, clearly.
Got a bad read. Well, anyway, we'll see how that develops. But, we're also sitting here on the morn before the State of the Union.
Yeah.
Which, there's so much stuff. Last week was hilarious in that they had their first cabinet meeting. And it was like Thursday of last week, and I remember, or Wednesday of last week, and I remember thinking, like, my God, so much has happened in the 6 weeks up to that first cabinet meeting. Mm-hmm. You forget how quickly everything has been put together.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ground that's been covered here in American politics.
A lot of ground that's been covered. I have one bone to pick, and that is the semantics of the fact it's not technically a State of the Union.
You're going to do that?
Address to Congress.
You're going to do that?
I'm going to say it to say we need to end that.
A joint session?
When people are like, well, actually, it's a joint session.
So
and it's like, and they're all State of the Unions.
Yeah.
It's a State of the Union.
Yeah.
You know, the Union's been around for a while. We can all say it's the Union, the State of the Union.
Yeah, sorry, White House
I hate
Correspondents
that
Association.
Shit. They always do this parenthetical, not an actual State of the Union. It's like, oh, you nerds, just shut up. We know, we get it. You're smart.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's not a joint session.
Just call it a State of the Union.
F you.
Yeah.
So anyway, we thought we'd talk a little bit about that, maybe some of the things that we're about to hear in that this evening that revolve around the accomplishments of the first 6-8 weeks. But we also have a tremendous guest. Last week, and we talked about this on the program, but it feels the need to underscore how significant a development it was of the House passing their budget. Mm-hmm. Because everything that can't be done via executive order or by nominating and confirming cabinet secretaries that can have fundamental change in their cabinet positions or anything that's dealing with Doge and Elon has to be done through the legislative process. And all the accomplishments that you all want to see happen have to be done through something they call reconciliation. The whole bag, every egg is in one basket. And they have a 2-seat majority in the House of Representatives, which makes things a little bit tricky. By passing the first step in the budget that they did last week, it is a monumental accomplishment, the likes of which, I don't feel like it got enough appreciation, right? The Senate moved. We heard from Thune about that. You got to hear about the quarterback of that operation. Jodey Arrington is the chairman of the Budget Committee in the House. So we thought, hey, let's have him on. Mm-hmm. You know, we hear about the Senate stuff from Thune. We hear about the White House stuff from, the White House press secretary. We might as well get the budget chairman.
Powerful friends here at the Ruthless Variety Program.
As it turns out. So you're going to hear from him here on the program today as well, and we're going to play a game. Yeah. King of the Hill.
Yeah. Because we missed it because of the outbreak of the flu here at the program.
Yeah.
We didn't play it on Thursday.
We didn't, but I will say the timelines are sort of like in a 10-day rotation as a result of that.
Yeah.
Because,
It's like the NBA. It's like the NBA. We have a little bit of load management going on.
It's the load management.
That's what it is.
You know a lot about load management, don't you, Michael?
Not touching that.
Okay. Here we go. The top 5 wins as we see it that have gone on here in the Trump administration. You can order these things differently, and that's part of our question of the day that we'll get to you in a moment. But we start off with number 5, and it's just the mere existence of Doge.
Yeah. Huge.
Fellas, this is, in my mind, this took a different shape after the first cabinet meeting because everything that the press and the Democrats are trying to do when it revolves around Doge is create outrage and controversy and the presence of Elon Musk, and they've made him the whipping boy because they can't figure out how to go at Trump. So let's just attack Elon Musk and all this stuff, and basically trying to turn him into an HR manager for the federal government, right? Yeah. But Elon went into that cabinet meeting and was basically like, look, I'm not doing your job. You're doing your job. You're trying to implement the America First agenda for President Trump. That's what you're doing. My job is to clear out the mess that everybody else created before you got there.
Yeah.
And that, to me, reset the dial on the importance of what it is that they're doing, his understanding of the remit that Doge basically has. Because Democrats have tried to take this to a point where they're like, well, this guy's just trying to be the emperor of all things federal government, and he's, running outside of the constitutional prescriptions of how you spend money. He was like, no. This is what I'm doing. It was the first time that I saw a very adequate description. I think we've known this on this show, but for the American public, of what it is that he's doing here. What do you guys think about that?
Doge is a perfect place to start because this guy campaigned on changing Washington, and this is probably the easiest identifiable way that he is actually changing Washington in a way that no president before him ever has. He is cutting government in a way that no president before him ever has. Other presidents sort of go along to get along, Republican and Democrat. Yep. They work within the system they're given. And he has stepped up to the plate, and he is like, no, I'm not just taking what we're given. People want change in Washington, and I'm going to start line by line by line. And he's tasked Elon Musk. I mean, this guy has had so much success in the private sector. Why not take that brilliance and apply it to the public sector? God knows we need it. God knows we spend way too much money. And what has he found? Lunatic programs spending money on trans plays in Ireland and sex changes in Nicaragua and everything else, and he's cutting that back. And I'm telling you, only Donald Trump is able to execute on something like this because he doesn't give a shit when the Washington Post criticizes him. Yeah. When they criticize him, he's like, I'm on to something.
And cutting waste and fraud from our government is politically popular. I mean, you're talking about like 80-20 issue here in this country, which is demonstrated not just by the reaction to some of these programs, which have outraged Americans. It's how the Democrats and the media have tried to defend it. And that is not actually defending the thing, because the thing is indefensible, right?
It is.
Like the programs that Elon Musk has identified. They attack Elon Musk.
Yeah,
right?
They can't. They have to go
because
at him.
They have to.
Yeah,
right. So that's why I'm so glad that they have Doge and they can continue to do that. And I totally agree with you, Holmes, that meeting with the cabinet, he re-understood the remit of what Doge could do, where it could add the most value, finding the waste, finding the fraud at these organizations. And frankly, we sort of previewed all of that in the Tuesday episode last week when we were like, I think he's getting a little out over his skis with this email. And it was sort of prescient.
Yeah, you put it back into context. Yeah. I totally agree. I think that was a big part of it. But look, it's not that everyone is the Biden administration and the Obama administration totally negligent. Yep. Mm-hmm. And there's been administrations, as far as the eye can see, that have been negligent in this regard. But I will say, from a cabinet secretary standpoint, you only have so much bandwidth, and you have a short amount of time to try to figure out how to use the political capital that you've been given to try to accomplish the things that were set out by a president in a campaign that people wanted. Mm-hmm. And you can either focus on that, or you can do the cleanup.
Well, because it's been made purposely difficult to rein in government. I mean, back to that story we told a few weeks ago about how all the personnel files of everybody who works for the federal government is in some mine in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And it's you have to understand, a system that wishes to perpetuate itself does that. Mm-hmm. Makes it as difficult as possible to change anything. So yeah, these cabinet secretaries and stuff, they're between a rock and a hard place, right? It's tough to actually execute on what Doge is doing because they make it difficult to undo anything.
Yeah, but if you have Doge, somebody's doing it for you.
Yeah. Exactly. And even Trump 1.0, Trump 45 did not get to this. Mm-hmm. I mean, they had a lot of successes, but they did not cut the government the way Doge is doing right now. And it's like Duncan always says, the first term was like a pop quiz. This next term is like a take-home test where they did planning. They knew exactly what they needed to do to attack the deep state in the way that they're doing so successfully right now.
And you hear little things, he's like, hey, find savings here, find savings there. And I heard the Secretary of Commerce, Brett Baer, did a great interview, which, by the way, he's doing great interviews with all of these guys. And we intend to do them here, too, to get at different things than Brett was. But one of the things was, see if you can find some savings. And he was like, we do this census. It costs us $40 billion every year.
Wow.
Did you guys hear this? Mm-hmm. This is the most amazing thing.
I actually did not.
So Brett asked him about this, and he's like, we have $40 billion, and you employ 64,000 people to travel around the country. You've got to buy cars and vehicles, put people up, get meals, and all these things, and their job is to go door to door and meet with people and count the number of folks, and then they got to go back and check it, and that's how they come up with a 10-year census. And this is a major expenditure, $40 billion.
That's a lot of money.
He's like, we have 64,000 employees that do go door to door already every single day, and they actually have a definitive idea of how many people live in a house just by virtue of what it is they do. It's called the post office. Mm-hmm. So maybe we just make the post office in charge of the census. And I was like, oh, man, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. You don't get to think outside the lines unless you have something like Doge that is putting an emphasis on streamlining and efficiency. So they've found $55 billion to $134 billion already. This is according to an article we've got from Newsweek. But there's big things in there, and there are potentially structural things that can lead to a lot more savings. And they haven't even really gotten started yet. So Doge is our number 5. You could rank it much higher than that, but it is what it is. Number 4, this is an important one here to the Variety program, keeping men out of women's sports.
Huge.
And according to the White House, in what they did with the executive order, that's already had huge ramifications. You saw the NCAA immediately take action on this, and they declined entirely to have a point of view until President Trump expressed one. You saw the governor of Maine try to get into an argument. I mean, again, I think after what we saw with Zelensky and the governor of Maine over the last 10 days, you're not going to come in hot on this White House. Right. Like, if you got a meeting with President Trump and he has a microphone within 10 yards of him, don't do it.
And again, this is an 80-20 issue.
Right.
Like, so many voters, friend of the program, Megyn Kelly, huge proponent of making sure this got done. It's a simple thing. It's something that by far most Americans agree with. Keep men out of women's sports. It's that simple. And like you said, when President Trump showed that leadership, the NCAA was like, okay, finally, thank God we can finally codify this and say, men don't play women's sports. It's incredible that it had to be done, but it had to be done.
Yeah. And the leadership that Donald Trump showed on this issue, not only on the campaign trail, but with the executive action, that leading the way has also led to success in Congress. As, Majority Leader Thune talked to us last week about, they're putting that on the floor.
Yeah,
like we're codifying into law.
That's right. No, Thune broke news here when he was talking about them moving towards this bill. Now, he also expects Democrat opposition to it. Now, it's not going to erase what Trump has already done with the executive order, but by virtue of showing the American people, even if they don't get this thing over the 60 vote threshold, watching Democrats try to tie themselves in knots to explain why it is that men should play women's sports.
Yeah.
The political impact.
I would love to see a swing state Democratic senator be like, no.
They're gonna.
Yeah. Shout out John Ossoff.
Yeah. Oh, that guy's gonna find religion.
Yeah. Have a good run.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah. Well, another interesting character is Alyssa Slotkin. She voted to keep men in women's sports, and she is the response tonight.
Yeah.
Which I also find completely hilarious. Mm-hmm. Like, Democrats always do this thing. Every time they think they've got a problem, they always think it's a demographic issue.
Yep.
Right? I mean, it's the presence of Tim Walz on this ticket was a perfect example of them saying, okay, well, we're having a failure to relate to the middle of the country, and we're doing really poorly with white men. Let's go find a white man from the middle of the country. Like, regardless of the fact that he believes you ought to put tampons in men's bathrooms.
Right.
Like, if he looks like them, they'll believe him.
Yeah.
Because that's the way the Democrat mind thinks
100%.
these days.
He put a camo hat on. He carried a shotgun. Don't you love him now?
Right.
And it's like, no, he's a left-wing lunatic.
The same thing goes for her. I mean, she is voting to give stimulus checks to criminals like Larry Nassar. She is voting to do everything that the libs want, including let China into their state.
Yeah.
She's voting to eliminate gas-powered cars from Michigan.
In Michigan.
It's just wild. It's wild. Anyway, that is a very, very, very big one for us. We're going to get to the top 3 right after this.
To go further, you need to be ready for what's down the road. As energy demand continues to rise, we're harnessing breakthrough innovations to increase production in the Gulf of America. Our latest deepwater development, Anchor, produces previously inaccessible oil and natural gas, allowing us to deliver the energy we all need today so everyone can follow their own road. That's energy in progress.
All right, so welcome back. Doing the top 5 accomplishments that we think you're going to hear about tonight at the State of the Union. Certainly top 5 in our opinion. You can add some. We'll talk about that in a minute with a question of the day. Remember, you can like and subscribe, so make sure that that's part of what you're doing here. But number 3 in our mind is ending the slush fund of USAID.
Yep, that's what it was.
And look, it's popular rampantly. Everyone thinks this is a good idea across the country. I mean, they talk about 80-20 issues. This is a big one.
Of course they think it's popular. Free money.
But like this is a very big one when you are involved in what we've been involved in this line of work for as long as we have. Because what Democrats did is take a fund designed for soft power that would eliminate the need for the use of troops on the ground and military presence around this world to try to curry some favor with organizations and regimes that wouldn't ordinarily be interested in that on anything else other than the end of a barrel. But that was the intent. And they perverted it year after year after year. It became ideologically off the left-hand side of the map, but also was treated, I would say by even some Republicans, but certainly all of the Democratic Party, as sacrosanct.
Yeah.
Don't touch it. And like you didn't even get anybody before Doge that was like, wait a second, trans studies in Tanzania?
Right.
How the hell is the American taxpayer benefited by that?
Right. I think that is such an important point, the background that you just provided, Josh, because the context is how Democrats corrupted it. And it's another lesson in how absolute power absolutely corrupts. Yep. Democrats are never questioned by the media when they have control of something and when they're moving it further to the left. And that is how you get these inexplicable programs. Like there was something Elon tweeted late last week about trans surgeries in India.
Yeah.
That the trans surgeries in India are down because USAID funding has gone away. Can you believe that?
The thing is you look at this list that Doge provided and that you see where the American taxpayer money has been going. This is, especially right around tax season, everyone can look at this and just get outraged, thinking that my money is being spent on what? The Washington Examiner had in this article they wrote, the Washington Examiner identified well over 100 USAID alumni working for shadowy entities linked to Democratic-aligned Arabella Advisors' dark money network.
Wow, I'm
They
shocked.
just turned it into their own piggy bank. The left had essentially taken money out of taxpayers' pockets and been like, we're going to put it all into our causes. We're going to pay off all our friends. Stacey Abrams got what, $3 billion? $2 billion.
The idea that political connections play any role in the distribution of foreign aid funds is reprehensible stuff. But that's what that is. You know, we also saw the thing, it's not USAID connected, but Lee Zeldin and his crew are doing a hell of a job over at EPA with that $2 billion to Stacey Abrams that we just discussed. Turns out it's like $20 billion to places that are just like that.
Yeah, other shadowy organizations with flowery names, climate justice action or stuff like that, and you find out like these are people who are like shutting down highways or I don't know, bringing the tents to the Hamas rallies at Columbia,
taking billions
with a B,
billions of dollars by day, and then going and putting an anti-Semitic protest on a college campus.
Like
together by night.
Think about that when you're filling out your taxes.
I mean, wild stuff. It's just incredible. So anyway, number 3, that's USAID. Number 2, and this could very easily be number 1. We talked about it a little bit. Immigration, just in and of itself. Look, so much of this we talked a lot about over the last 3 years with the Biden administration. The border problems were not just their willful ignorance about how to secure a border. It was the message that they were sending by a failure to do so. So they were basically having a welcome sign out to the most dangerous people around this world. This is the way you get into our country. And Trump, who for, 8-9 years, this has been a signature issue. And he talks about it relentlessly. Just by virtue, before he even signed the first executive order, just by virtue of stepping foot into the White House, people are like, can't do it. And then he signed the executive orders. And then all of a sudden you saw end of last week, I saw the 29 cartel members in Mexico were being extradited to the United States for prosecution, something that could have been done at any point over the last
That's what's
30
so frustrating.
years, right? But it was never an emphasis for anybody else. It is an emphasis for them. So what's the result? Border crossings are down 93% since Trump took off. 93%. We are 8 weeks in, folks. 93%? You don't think that the psychology of the border has more to do with it than anything else? I mean, it just does. It's been time tested that if you intend to ensure that people know There's no free lunch here, and it's going to be a hell of a problem if you try to cross this border, but they're not going to come.
That's the thing the entire world saw when the Democrats, during their primary, they were asked the question, who would provide free health care, education, all the benefits to an illegal immigrant who enters the U.S.? And every single Democrat on that stage, including Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, raised their hand and said, yeah, I would support that. The whole world saw that. And that message was loud and clear. The border was open for business, and that's what you saw. Absolute mayhem at the border. The day Trump steps in, new sheriff in town.
And it wasn't just the southern border. Joe Biden had programs where he would fly migrants from different countries into America. And let me read you a report from Bill Malugin that came out late last week. Some of you may have seen it, but this really puts the nail on the head. That ICE has detained and charged a man with stabbing 3 people to death, including 2 children in Fayetteville, North Carolina, who first flew to the United States in July of 2024 under Biden's controversial CHNV migrant flights program. This is a 26-year-old from Haiti who didn't speak English, and he killed a 4-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 77-year-old woman.
There's just not enough contempt to express.
And it is only under arrest because Donald Trump is president of the United States.
That's it. But, I mean, how do you even come up with these ideas? You know? Like, how, if your goal is not active sabotage of the American people, I don't know how else to explain it.
And how could you be angry enough at Joe Biden and the Democrats and Kamala Harris? You know, at that time in July of 2024, she's on television with ads about how I've prosecuted international terrorists and, you know, fought the cartels.
Nobody's
and
tougher.
I want a secure border. Meanwhile, you know, somebody's being flown around the country and stabbing people.
It's also, if I'm not mistaken, the exact time frame that the Biden administration finally did take some executive orders that did reduce a little bit of the flow. And they claimed for 3 years that they couldn't do it. It was all Congress's fault. But, like, as they're doing that, they're flying a dude from Haiti over who ultimately commits quadruple homicide against children in the United States.
It's just bullshit. Have you ever received a free plane ticket from the federal government? Anybody sitting at this table? No, I haven't. No. I sure haven't. No. So why is it that people in foreign countries with rap sheets are coming over here and allowed to, like, take our money that we're earning and putting into the federal coffers on April 15th to just basically wreak mayhem over regular people?
Yeah.
It needed to stop, and that's why President Trump was elected, and thank God he was.
Hugely important. Number one, and this is the reason we picked this as number one, is because it's not just the government.
Yeah.
The DEI sort of psychology that was pushed by the Biden administration, pushed by the Obama administration, pushed by the Biden administration, that it became enraptured in corporate America and became a cultural change agent that the left ultimately tries to do. The fact that this president ended DEI, was not afraid to speak about it, and ended it for the federal government, immediately had ramifications well beyond the federal government across this country. I mean, you saw some of the stores, you know, some of the retail stores out there who had these just ridiculous DEI programs that were immediately like, no, we're getting rid of all of this. And they had touted with press releases their good work on trying to implement these DEI things. The cultural change that took place with this administration making this a priority on day one, I don't think can really be quantified. It's the kind of thing that, like, I mean, we've talked about on this show for months. 50 years from now, 60 years from now, we'll look back on the DEI time period as like a Jim Crow type experience, like where the federal government codified active racism in this country. And that's what that was. Putting an end to that has huge ramifications.
It was active racism, and it was an industrial complex protection racket.
There you go. Yeah.
Where essentially you had these left-wing groups which figured out, hey, nice company you got there. It would be a real shame if someone boycotted it and burned it to the ground. And they ran amok for years with the Biden administration's blessing of doing this to companies.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other side of it to me, because I totally agree with both of you. But, like, it's not just that it was a cultural stain on America. I mean, this is like extricating stage 4 cancer from the American soul, I think. I mean, just a horrible thing. And I agree, we're going to look back on it as Jim Crow. But the other side of it, too, is it had this reinforcement mechanism from the radical left where, like, these guys ran this protection racket where you had to pay them.
Yeah.
And that was the most offensive thing to me as somebody who, like, lives and breathes and works in politics, is, like, not only are you doing something that's horrific, but, like, you got to pay some of the worst people in the world to tell America you're good for doing it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the insanity.
It's shocking. It's part of it, like the DEI thing to me has sort of illuminated another aspect of what it means to be a progressive liberal. And that I've never really wrapped my mind around how they can think that capitalism and business in America and creation of wealth and jobs and prosperity for the United States is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's a hard concept to sort of wrap your mind around. Like, why is this bad? But then you see how it is that they practice capitalism.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, that's what they think it happens. Right? They think the small business like rolls into a town and rolls into like some neighborhood and is like, you're going to buy groceries at my place. I'm going to fuck up all your plants.
That's it. They're like, they're like, what's created by me going around saying, you implement my policy so I can buy some houses.
Don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
Like it sort of illuminates what they always talk about it as if it's so negative and like it's such an oppressive part of our society. And I look around and like, I mean, I don't know. It looks like it's lifted a whole bunch of people out of poverty to me. It looks like it's made America the leader of the free world. Like, I don't really understand that. But if your whole concept of capitalism is shaking people down,
That's it.
mafia style, and like a racketeering deal across the United States, the likes of which they implemented with DEI, I can understand why you'd have a dim view of it.
That's it.
I get it. They're like, yeah, we're going to do it for this, but like nobody else should do it.
Yeah.
Oh, yoy. Ridiculous. So anyway, that's our top 5. And that's, a little bit of a preview of some of the things that we expect to hear. Obviously, Ukraine's coming up. I mean, there's no way that can't come up after the events of last week. Many, many other issues that this president will talk about. But he's really, I think one of the unique things about this presidency in the first few weeks has been that he's been a transformative figure in many ways and touched a lot of things that people didn't think he either had interest in or that if it didn't directly benefit, his worldview, that he wouldn't become a part of. Yeah. I mean, I think Doge is a part of that. Yeah. All the things we just talked about. I mean, you knew he was going to do what he was going to do on immigration and trade and taxes. Right. But like all the other things that they've been involved in from a cultural and societal point of view, they run against type a little bit. And I think that's going to be a big part of the speech.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And I think you're right that Ukraine is going to come up. And, of course, the White House was out yesterday previewing everything that they're going to highlight in the speech. But one of the great things about this program is it is a community. Our audience is our friends. I mean, we went through these 5 items because these are the 5 things that we hear the most about in the comment boards from everybody who's liking and subscribing and commenting. And these are the things that our audience is hoping to hear tonight. I'm sure the president is going to talk about all these things. And I thought I just really think one of the best things about the program is that we are doing what the audience is asking.
Well, I mean, the way we see it is we're sitting down at the corner bar with all of you on a day-to-day basis and talking these things through. And so that's, if we sound like all your friends, that's why. Yeah. Our question of the day, therefore, is, what else would you add to this list? Mm-hmm. What else would you add to it? I mean, are there more things that we need to illuminate and talk more? What would you like to hear the president say in the State of the Union that's not on those top 5 of big accomplishments that we've been dealing with?
Yeah, and, if he only talked about these 5 things, I think it'd be a fantastic speech. There's obviously going to be a lot more. What I'm most looking forward to is the personal stories. I think Trump's first administration, he did a great job at that, at illuminating, some stories that people need to hear. People stand up, everybody claps. I expect we'll see a lot of that. And those are always some of my favorite vignettes from State of the Unions.
Yeah, I totally agree. So when we return, we will return with your comments from last, was it Tuesday or Thursday?
It was Tuesday.
It was Tuesday's one because we just did the interviews on Thursday. But so it's been a little while, but it's a very pertinent question. It actually ties into what we're talking about today. What should Doge focus on? We'll get to it right after this.
American investment. more jobs, higher wages. It was President Trump's promise when he championed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and American businesses delivered. Investing in U.S. manufacturing and equipment, increasing wages for American workers, and creating over 500,000 new jobs. That's why he's fighting to do it again for families, workers, and businesses. Tell Congress to extend and strengthen President Trump's tax reform. Paid for by the Business Roundtable. Learn more at brt.org.
All right, so back with your comments. You got to like and subscribe. Thank you to the thousands of people who are doing that on a daily basis. We really appreciate it. It's how we reach all of you and all of your friends. To start our comments, we always start with a voice.
Okay, first one comes from Bailey. And Bailey writes, I think that Doge needs to focus on food stamps. That needs an effing wrecking ball run through it. When did it become okay to go to McDonald's or Carl's Jr.'s or a convenience store and purchase junk food using food stamps? Not to mention all the junk food that they purchase. I was at Albertsons one day, and a lady with 4 young kids paid for lobster tails with her food stamps card. I'm a teacher, and I don't even buy lobster tails because of the price.
Wait, hold on. I would love to see. I can't believe encountering that. You imagine rolling up at the Albertsons,
yeah,
and the person in front of you is like custom ordered the 4 lobster tails in front of you, and they're like, "Oh, hold on, let me run these stamps."
Right.
Come on.
And you're a
man.
teacher. You've been responding to angry emails from parents in the classroom all day, and then you're buying mac and cheese. It's a fucking kick in the gut.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it is.
Yes, that's tough. That's a good one. I hadn't thought about that. You know, that was a big conversation in the 90s when we did the last reordering of balanced budget and all of that stuff. And there was some, and I have a feeling that RFK is going to be interested in the junk food component.
For sure.
Maha.
Don't you think? All right, comment 2. Dunks, what do we got?
This is from Barch. I think Doge needs to take a look at entitlements, especially means-tested entitlements. The amount of grift endemic to entitlements is probably the location of significant savings within the federal budget.
So right. So right. It's not even just so much as a grift as much as it is reality. One of the great things, and like this isn't probably the most popular thing to say, but one of the great things in my mind about Doge is for 30 years, everyone who has a conversation about the 10, 20, 30, 35, 36 trillion dollars in debt has always said like, oh, well, if we can't just eliminate the waste, fraud, and abuse.
It's a good place to start.
Or oh, you know, if we don't have a war with Ukraine type situation, oh, like that would all be balanced budget. Like, truth is that you could shut down our government tomorrow and not reopen it until 2036 and still not have a balanced budget, even if you had 4.5% growth in the economy. That's the truth.
It's sobering.
And the reality is the entitlement piece of that drives it. And it's not just Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. It's the interest on the national debt. And none of your people vote on that. Everyone we've had on, that's the one piece that Congress and the president, there's nothing they can do about it. You either default your country, which wouldn't be good for the economy, by the way. Your growth at 2.5, 3, it would look like negative 2.5 and 3.
Bad luck.
Bad luck. But like, that is the piece that you've got to handle, is the interest on the national debt and these entitlement programs that do need to be reformed. And my hope is that Doge, because of the conversation that we're having for the first time in a real way, gets us through identifying waste, fraud, and abuse, and then we can have a real conversation.
Dude, you might be right. That's a really good point.
I mean, we have to have
it. Fresh look.
I mean, look,
what needs to happen.
You were talking about how Ruthless is like your buddies at the bar. You remember this from last week when we were at the bar, and I was like, I'm having a lot of fun with Grok on like sports stats and stuff.
Yeah, you were looking up all this
It's
stuff.
absolutely incredible. And it was like, I'm going to ask Grok. You know, like if we had a shutdown here, but like we kept, paying Social Security and Medicare and like defense obligations and stuff,
Yeah.
If we still, kept all of that running, but we shut down that discretionary budget.
It means you didn't pave a federal road anywhere in the country.
Yeah. How long would it take to get out of this debt? And Grok, which is like getting insane, by the way. I think this is version 3. It's getting incredible.
This is the XAI deal,
And if you defaulted on the interest payments, like $1 trillion a year, even if you did that and like, the entire global economy would probably falter at that point. But just as a thought experiment, 19 years. It would take 19 years
even
to pay
if you
it.
defaulted on the national debt.
Yeah.
So, like, again, very good place to start with the Doge stuff. My hope is that all of that gets into the conversation that Bark is talking about on this deal. Smuggles, what do we got?
Comment 3 is from Lorinda Leach. Lorinda writes, honestly, I know Trump needs to work with the Senate and Congress, but I think Doge should focus on all the perks and self-enrichment that goes on with those entitled, power-hungry a-holes. Maybe if they didn't make things so cushy and financially profitable for them, they wouldn't stay in office forever. Either that or past term limits, but they will never go for that.
So, like, I'm conflicted by this because I've actually lived in that world and seen how different people operate. And I think there is, at one level, the indefensible, which is like the Nancy Pelosi stock portfolio.
Which is insane. Outperforms the S&P.
Yeah, like, there have those like AI bots that track every investment that they make because they have to be transparent. And then if you were to do that, you'd be up like 235% in your investment.
Just follow Pelosi and you win.
Yeah, right, which is shocking.
Yeah.
And like, look, if it were up to me, I think you would have to divest of individual stocks entirely if you were an elected member of Congress. You just should. I mean, it's just, you just should. Mm-hmm. But, like, look, I also worked for a guy who, by marriage, his wife's mom died, and they inherited a lot of money. They were a successful family. And so there was nothing but attacks about, like, why does he have so much money? He's always been in, public service and all that stuff. And it's like, well, how much do you want to talk about a death in the family? Because that's pretty much what it is. And I think that there is a difference between the self-enrichment of like the 60s, 70s, and 80s and like Dan Rostenkowski back in the old House Ways and Means days of like the 86 Tax Act and using campaign money to have people go mow their lawns. Like, that shit's not happening. Mm-hmm. But there is some shady shit amongst a few, like Pelosi, that somehow they just end up investing wisely all the time. But, like, I'll be honest, I could sound like the most naive person on the face of the planet. There's no, like, USAID funding going to a member of Congress. There's just not. Now, could there be what do you call those? The old revolving door situation where somebody's very supportive of something, and then all of a sudden they get out of Congress and they're the chairman of whatever that organization is. Yeah, I think that should exist. And corruption is for real. But it's not like, I just want to be honest with people.
No, it's a little more complicated than that. I think I saw the story about Sheldon Whitehouse's wife. Do you know about
there
this?
There it is.
Song?
So, like, this is exactly what I'm
So his wife works for a climate group that pushes that advocates for legislation that he then pushes. Yeah. And then his daughter works at an investment firm that makes money on like renewable resources. Their family business is just enriching themselves on that.
Yeah, and,
so 100%, that is an issue.
And you saw it with the Bidens.
100%.
Right? So if you're looking at corruption, it's not like the people who are in Congress are funneling money to themselves. It's more complicated than that. What they're doing is having a whole bunch of grifting family members around them, like Hunter Biden, going to get contracts from a Ukrainian oil company, of which he has no experience in energy or Ukraine, and getting paid millions of dollars by virtue of the fact that he's related to his dad. Like, that's where the corruption is. And that's that stuff. Sheldon Whitehouse and a whole bunch of others is problematic. That's where you got to focus your fire on that. Too many like Facebook stuff and like chain emails that you get from your grandparents, like just send you in the wrong direction on that. Don't you guys think?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyway, that's hopefully an explanation that helps clarify something. That's what we seek to do here in the Variety Program. Mm-hmm. Try to give you some truth while we're at it. When we come back, folks, an epic King of the Hill. Cheri is looking to be the first 5-time champion. Right after this.
Hardworking Americans know when it's time to roll up our sleeves and get the job done. Now is the time to unleash our nation's energy to create jobs, secure our future, and make life better, more affordable, and full of opportunity for all Americans. That's the power of America's oil and natural gas. Learn more at lightsonenergy.org. Paid for by the American Petroleum Institute.
Okay, welcome back. We are going to play the signature game here of the Variety Program on a special Tuesday right here before the State of the Union. I'm the defending champ, Cheri. 5 times she took her right through 500 episodes. Like she's
just
steaming.
So hot. Like I'm actually kind of mad that I have to play against her because it just doesn't seem fair with this generational run she's on. She's like the damn New England Patriots. But I am bringing Rick Wilson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay, we haven't
flavor.
seen him in a while. Yeah, that is a different flavor.
Yeah.
So do we go ringside? Let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. It's time for King of the Hill. In the blue corner, fighting out of MSNBC, Rick Wilson. And now, in the crimson red corner, fighting from her own Twitter account and current champion of the world, Commie Cheri Jacobus.
You can't beat that.
Gosh, wait, who's judge here?
I'm the judge today.
Wow, Ashbrook
yes.
is judge.
Your Honor.
A fair judge.
A fair and thoughtful judge, a jurist, the likes of which we could all hope to have our...
The Clarence Thomas of the Ruthless Variety Program.
Bailiff, call your exhibit.
Yep,
Yeah.
let's do it.
Okay, all right. I'm going to start with just a fantastic exhibit. It's going to be number 5, if you don't mind, Spigettes. And this is Cheri, who's arguing about the Elon stuff. And she says, if we liquidated Elon, she's upset about the cuts. If we liquidated Elon, that means just confiscate everything he's got. Every American could get a check for $1 million.
Oh, God.
So wait. So, like, you know,
Math major.
Helpfully, you know, the good people of X and the community notes have done a little math on that. It turns out at the highest that he is evaluated in terms of his total wealth, the average American would get $1,200.
It's a little off.
And what I love so much about it is that, like, she gives you the brainworm, she gives you all this, and then every once in a while, just the rank dumb fuckery comes through where it's like, you know, there's no correction. It's still up.
Yeah.
Like the basic math.
I got to apologize to Cheri. I was unfamiliar with your game. Like, that is incredible, being that stupid.
That's an incredibly dumb take.
Okay. Well, I think I have something even dumber. Spaghetti, can I get Exhibit 10, please? Okay, so Rick Wilson is quote-tweeting Manu Raju. And as you'll recall, we were talking about how we're going to have Jodey Arrington in here for the episode. They passed Trump's budget in the House of Representatives. And the media and all of these left-wing accounts on Twitter, the night of that passage, were like foaming at the mouth, trying to figure out ways to derail this thing. And Manu was tweeting about how it's being pulled from the floor. A million tweets I saw on that night. He quote tweets it and says, Speaker Cuckley can't pass Trump's, quote, big, beautiful bill. Now, he quote tweets that. He's talking about Speaker Johnson, who had a massive victory, passed the big, beautiful bill. So what I love about this is it's a 2-for-1, folks. You have the Never Trumpers owned, and you have the reporter, the media, owned.
That's a good one. 2 for 1.
2 for 1.
As good as the 2-for-1 is, it just doesn't hold a candle to $1 million to every person.
Rigged court.
I'm sorry,
So
Michael.
Rigged
but
court.
the
Unbelievable.
First round goes to
It's
Cheri.
an element of stupidity that just can't be overlooked.
It can't.
And the fact that you wouldn't immediately delete it and
Okay.
be like, I'm an idiot.
I already gave you your plaudits. We're moving on to exhibit number 7. I'm giving you the hottest
he's
smoke
upset.
possible.
Now he's upset.
Rick Wilson says, a non-trivial percentage of Roman emperors were killed by the Praetorian Guard.
Oh, my.
Apropos of nothing.
Good God.
Let's see if the judge likes that one.
Heads up, Kash Patel. There you go.
Well, if you want to stay Roman, I've got a lot of things, but let me just sort through and find out. I'd like to stay on genre when I win.
Oh, my God. It's just unfair.
No way.
She's just unfair.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have 9 things to choose from, but whatever comes up, I like to play at a 1-to-1 basis just so we all have a good idea.
Okay, bailiff, we watching the clock here.
Are you the bailiff? I thought you were a contestant.
All right, we can get the take.
Yeah, no, okay. So let's put up Exhibit 6, please, if you don't mind. And what she's doing is quote tweeting.
Good God.
She's quote tweeting a account that has talked about how pro-Trump activists basically at CPAC wanted Trump to run for a 3rd term, right?
Okay.
They're advocating that they should change the Constitution, essentially, to give Trump a 3rd term. And she simply writes, Google Ides of March. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Ides of March is about Julius Caesar and about how he had worked a deal with the Senate to basically remain in power as a dictator and was shortly thereafter assassinated.
I hear you. It's a great tweet.
That is what she is suggesting.
Well, right.
Is a parallel to people who are wanting Trump to be around for a 3rd term. Is the immediate, and I don't even want to say it out loud, but the parallel of what she thinks would happen to this country if such a thing were embarked upon.
Last thing.
I think I rest my case.
Last thing I'm saying is I think your tweet was the PG version of my tweet. My tweet was the NC-17 version. He was very clear what he wanted to happen.
And he wanted it to happen from the inside. And I think Rick Wilson wins.
Let's go. Let's go.
I can't
We're
believe
going to a
it.
3rd round.
I can believe it.
I can't believe it.
It's a fair court.
Well, okay. Let me see what I've got because I have so many options. Okay, I'm just gonna go here. In fact, I have 16 different exhibits, so it's very difficult to sort through all of
Poor
these.
Spaghetti. You got the guy working overtime.
Well, we'd collaborate. I'd go back and forth and try to figure out. I'd do a couple extra days to look things through. But I think this one hits the nail on the head. Let's go with Exhibit 16. Cutting cancer research so that Trump can golf more doesn't make America great again.
Oh, my God.
Where do they get this?
Think about the equivalency.
Yeah.
Think about so he can? It's a dependent clause?
Yeah. These two things.
You gotta cut
You
the
get cancer or golf. You pick one. What?
Either the kids die or I get 9 holes this afternoon.
Yeah. It's an incredible
This is a
leap
former
in logic.
Republican.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I got something that can compete with that.
Okay.
Spaghetti, how about exhibit number 8, please? We got another quote tweet from Rick Wilson. He really loves the quote tweets, this guy.
Big guy.
He's quote tweeting the Lincoln Project, which I'm
my.
surprised is still in business. I would love Doge to go through the Lincoln Project.
Yeah.
It's a tweet about Doge that the Lincoln Project put out here on Elon Musk. And he quote tweets it. And he says, he, being Elon, he's taken the prize of most dangerous immigrant in history from Rupert Murdoch.
My God. Let alone who we discussed earlier, the Haitian that was flown in by Joe Biden who murdered children.
just
It's no, Elon Musk is worse than all of that.
Most dangerous immigrant.
Despicable people.
Oh, man.
Cutting cancer research is key.
This is a very, very difficult decision because the false equivalence that Cheri laid out is completely outrageous. However, the idea that a former Republican who used to talk about how great Fox is all of a sudden saying that Rupert Murdoch is the most dangerous immigrant in this country's history, it's just beyond the pale. And for that reason, Rick Wilson.
Down goes Frazier.
Down
goes Frazier.
Listen, I knew I had vulnerability when the assassination thing didn't catch.
Yeah.
I felt like that was particularly given the events of the last 8 months.
I mean, they were strong takes.
I felt like if that didn't do the trick, I was going to be vulnerable. Congratulations.
But the only reason it worked is because he had his own assassination thing.
The Praetorian Guard.
What a run for Cheri. Yeah. What a run for Cheri.
She'll be back.
She'll be back. What an incredible run. Great game of King of the Hill. We've got an incredible guest that we want to get to right now. He is the House Budget Chairman, Jodey Arrington. On the Ruthless Variety program, we always talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, right? No matter what, we'll give you the straight scoop. But our best stuff is sort of like just celebrating the awesome.
Yeah.
And so now we've got a guest that we can celebrate. He's not going to take the victory lap, so we might have to do some of this.
I'm shocked that he came in here with a coffee cup and not a cup full of bourbon.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, you haven't smelled the cup now, have you?
He is the House Budget Chairman, Jodey Arrington. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fabulous today. But on any other given day within the last several weeks, I could have been either the bad or ugly. But today, we were successful in at least one phase, and an important one, of reversing course for the last 4 years of just complete self-inflicted disaster, failed policies, reckless spending, and a major pivot to policies that will put us on the path to prosperity and a big investment in our security and all the things that we believe are going to be good for a safe, strong, free country and future for our children. So, man,
feels pretty good.
It feels really good, but I know there are big hurdles on the horizon here.
Yeah, and I want to get into all of that in a minute. But for those of you who don't follow every little nook and cranny of this development, the budget is the big deal. That's the ultimate shirts and skins exercise that allows you to open up the entire America First agenda, to open up everything President Trump ran on, and ultimately give the opportunity on a simple majority in both the House and the Senate to accomplish things like the tax piece, like the border security piece, energy, everything that we've been talking about here over the last couple of years. But you can't do any of it unless you rest that yoke on the shoulders of Jodey Arrington and make sure that he gets a budget passed first. And of course, look, we're in a stage where everybody's got a lot of opinions, and it ain't as easy as just sort of throwing a red jersey on or a blue jersey on. People, they like to be heard. And it turns out we have a 2-seat majority in the House of Representatives. Talk to us a little bit about the process from the original draft to ultimately getting to a point where you have a House budget, which all the pundits predicted, by the way, was going down like 17 times before this thing ultimately passed.
Well, that's interesting. That's how I feel, that I've, crashed and burned 17 times before. Yeah. But we're persistent, and, you have to get this right. We talked before we were on air about the monumental inflection point we're at as a nation, and how historic this recent election was, and we can't miss this opportunity, right? So we don't have the margin to that I had when I was a freshman the last time we did this, by the way. When we did
17,
in 17,
sort of a breeze. Didn't feel like it.
It didn't feel like it. And even with the just tax policy, which is generally the easiest of the things that we're doing in the reconciliation bill, we lost like 13 Republicans. And we couldn't lose more than one last night. Right. So, there were lots of iterations, lots of conversations, lots of meetings, lots of give and take. I think the things that we're good at, like cutting taxes, weren't the big hurdles. Opening up energy after a complete whole-of-government beatdown for the last 4 years was not difficult. There'll certainly be parliamentarian questions about, does this comply with the Byrd Rule throughout like, for example, the REINS Act. We've been wanting to put that mechanism to sort of slow down and rein in the administrative state for a good while. So there's still things that we're going to have to shape up to thread the needle over in the Senate as these issues are litigated with the parliamentarian. The biggest hurdle, the most difficult thing to resolve, was spending reforms, as I've been taught to say. Did that make you feel better?
Yeah, no, I feel
Are you
great
feeling better?
Super comfortable.
Michael, you feel okay about that? We are spending this country off the fiscal cliff, and for people who don't follow the state of fiscal affairs of our country, we're borrowing $2 trillion a year. We have about a 7% deficit. That's the gap in revenue and spending. That's the deficit. Our deficit per GDP is 7%. It's wartime levels of deficit. and we've exceeded World War II in terms of the level of indebtedness, debt to GDP, and we're servicing the debt with $1 trillion, which now is more than we spend on Medicare recipients, on the entire national defense, and things are going to get exponentially worse over the next 10 years. We'll add $21 trillion in debt. 62 cents of every dollar will go to interest. And you don't want to know what happens beyond the 10 years. So
yeah, you don't even vote on the stuff. I mean, it's
on auto spend,
yeah.
And we rarely touch that 75% of the budget that we refer to as mandatory spending or entitlement programs. And people watch TV and they see the showdowns over the 25% of the budget, which is the annual appropriations.
Right. Small potatoes.
But nobody seems to know much about, and Congress seems not to pay as much attention to and act responsibly in its oversight capacity to make sure that all these mandatory programs in healthcare and welfare and veterans and employee benefits they're running well and efficiently, and that the monies are going to the people we intended them to go to, and that they're sustainable programs, and that we've rooted out waste and fraud, which is now, by the way, just in 70 programs in the government, $2.7 trillion over 10 years.
That's wild.
And across the government, fraud, according to GAO, is on the high end, $5 trillion. So we got a lot of work to do, to say the least. But people don't realize that it's not just a grease-like moment that's going to get us. It's already squeezing our ability to fund our national priorities. We're dangerously low, under 3%, in terms of our investment in our military. And the risks aren't going that way, and neither are our adversaries in terms of what they're doing to beef up their military. We're crowding out capital in the private sector, so we'd like to grow the economy, as President Trump said, like a rocket ship, but the biggest lead in the saddle is this deficit and all the borrowing of our federal government that we're robbing for investment for growth.
Yeah.
We're making the cost of capital go up, inflation go up. So you don't have to get to the point where the bond markets say, we don't believe you're going to pay us back, and therefore it's not just a premium tax that we want when we borrow. We're done.
Yeah.
And so then you're picking up the pieces, and you're not the same country you were. China gets the pole position. There's a new world order. I know I'm freaking everybody out at home.
No, I mean, I feel like he's singing our theme music
You know, is this so you
This
guys
is what-
understand?
yeah.
Because you know why? Because we got skin in the game in ways that maybe other political leaders who came through this town don't. I have 3 children.
Right.
But I'm also young enough that I think these things can happen in my prime and on our watch. And so, long story to say, I'm very proud of what we do to make a meaningful change in bending the spending that's driving the debt, and in a way that will steward tax dollars well, that will still preserve the program for the most vulnerable. Those policies are still going to be, as you know, they'll be meted out at the committee level, but these are real targets. They're meaningful numbers in terms of bringing deficit spending down, and I think we have a real shot of saving the country. I mean, at the end of the day, you can get a lot of things right, but if you bankrupt the country because of all of the trends that I have mentioned, then, hey, farm bills don't matter as much in West Texas. And
when you can't pay for them.
When you can't pay for them. So anyway, sorry about that
diatribe
there, but I think I'm wound up after a 3-hour debate with my Democrat
I can
colleagues.
see how he persuaded some people.
Yeah.
You know, that's a pretty good pitch.
Well, you know, I think in the build-up to this budget vote, you know, there was a worry that there'd be a handful of very conservative members who share these same concerns that you do, that they might not be on board, right? And the media was reporting it. There were side-by-sides of a lot of these Washington journalists saying if the vote's being pulled, the vote passed.
All of a sudden, they're lionizing people that they wouldn't be caught in the same room with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
In hopes that everything went down in failure.
But you guys solved all those problems. And, you know, could you speak to what goes into that? Does it just ultimately at the end of the day come down to trust? People have to trust you as chairman that this process is going to allow them to make their voices heard? Because in the past we've had issues with that, right?
Yeah. I think I think we all feel like no matter how long you've been here, whether it's 1 year or 8 years or 20 years, we've all heard we'll get them next year.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Just sign off on this last omnibus, and next year we're going to really trim the fat, And look, I was here in 2017 when we lost the opportunity with the trifecta through reconciliation to do the first meaningful entitlement reform since the Great Society, and it went down, unfortunately, in the Senate.
Yeah.
And we were able to pull the tax piece, the tax reform, and save that, move it forward, and do some really good things for the economy, and everybody benefited. But yeah, I think I'm a true believer in this. I mean, I don't feel like I'm taking orders from anybody but the people who sent me here, and my convictions are squarely on, answering to my children and my conscience and my God as to, did I do everything to address the threats? Did I make the sacrifices that every other American leader did in times like this? Because there are plenty of big moments that were seized and big challenges that we worked through, but we did it because people were willing to put their country ahead of their political interests, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think
this is that moment, in my opinion, and this is that issue, quite frankly.
I agree, but I think what's so impressive about this iteration and your leadership in particular about how we got here is that there's never been a generation that doesn't speak to their conviction about solving the problem.
Yes.
And the problem we've had in recent years is you get the conviction part. What you don't get is how do you get to yes part.
That's right.
And there is no way to even make a dent of bending this curve in terms of making us a fiscally healthy country again without getting as many people as you can to get to a majority to say yes to something.
That's right.
And that's what you've done here, which, look, I was a part of a lot of these things over the years. And I remember in 2011, with Barack Obama, and I remember John Boehner did his damnedest to try to figure out if there was a way that we could get that administration at a time would have been very easy, much easier than it is now, to sort of address those entitlement things that we're now becoming enveloped in. And ultimately, they're like, no, we're not interested in it. And, you mentioned the 2017 again, and now we get to a point where there's a wholesale conversation, not just with what you're doing in the budget process, but with Doge.
Yes.
And we're having this conversation in a meaningful way. I think this isn't some commission.
Couldn't agree more.
No,
you're right.
It's a blue ribbon
Don't
panel.
worry, we will study this in ways that have never been studied before.
And they always come back to the same thing. They're like, hey, you're screwed. Here's what I would do. And you're like, well,
looks
we're not
like
doing
we
that.
need strong leadership. It looks like we need political courage.
Yeah.
Wow, that's the punchline again.
Yeah, again.
So when do we see it? But I do think it's important. I think it was President Lincoln that said that without public sentiment, you can do nothing. With it, you can do anything. You got to bring the American people along. And on this issue, I think too many political leaders shy away from it. They don't want to get bogged down in it. They don't want to be misunderstood about what they want to do.
Because it's very easy to take everything out of context.
Super sensitive and very easy to
time-tested.
Time-tested. So we've all been like, Pavlov, shocked into, submission on that. But it turns out that even though it was a very painful last few years with one of the worst cost of living crises that working people especially had to endure, people started connecting the dots between the policies in Washington, in their nation's capital, and their pocketbooks back home. Like the spending, even monetary policy, and the borrowing, and the taxing and regulating, and all the various things that resulted in them paying higher interest rates for credit cards and car loans and their homes. And the biggest and most regressive and most sinister and gnarly tax, the inflation tax of 21%. And so I think it awakened something in the American people. And then, as you said, we have this very brave first-generation immigrant who's done pretty well here in this country, who is now kicking rocks over and exposing the not just horrible mismanagement and waste that you would assume in a big unwieldy government, but like the most absurd and insulting uses of our tax dollars.
It goes back to your whole point of the bending of the cost curve and the difficult conversations you have to have on things like entitlements or this stuff that isn't discretionary spending, how hard it is to get to that. Well, I can understand why it's hard to get to that when you have the entire liberal media and Democratic politicians up in arms when you're like, I think we should cut the grant for DEI workplaces in Serbia. You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, they make it hard for us just to do that.
It's like break to the protest at USAID. They're like, no, don't take their money. Their money, not your money.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. What movie is playing right now?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you knew it's a constitutional crisis unless we fund transgender studies in Tanzania.
Listen, there will be no peace in the Middle East without the $20 million for Sesame Street in Iraq.
No, that's a real thing.
You know that, right?
That's a real thing.
That is a real thing.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
No.
That's good context, brother.
Yeah.
It's good context to us doing some things that would otherwise almost be killed in the cradle of the Republican conference because of the incredible blowback of you're taking benefits from seniors. You're stealing food from the hungry mouths of children. It's already begun. But I think with all this exposure to the waste, fraud, and abuse from this administration and the good work of Elon Musk, with the support of President Trump, obviously, I think people are like, I'm not sure I believe those guys anymore. I'm not sure I believe them. And you know what? They keep talking about, all these people and constituencies. What about the taxpayer? What about the hardworking middle-class family? And according to a study, and I wrote about this in an op-ed, we want to take care of people who fall on hard times. And people who are working hard still struggling to pay for to provide for their families. There isn't anybody in the country, Republican or Democrat, that doesn't want to help. It's how you help. It's preserving the dollars for those folks and not for people here illegally and others who are ineligible for those services according to the law. But anyway, this campaign is just beginning as we move out of here are the budget targets in the resolution.
It feels
on
like
savings.
the first public case. And to your point about bringing the people along for the ride, you're right. You can't just step in and change everything and have everybody just sort of assume that they're going to come along for the ride. Like, there's a very effective case against any change. And there has been generations of political movements that have been built upon any sort of antithesis of a change because it scares people.
Yes.
But what you're doing is bending. And Democrats, 50 years, starting with FDR and LBJ, have done just a terrific job of taking what is a prescriptively terrible set of circumstances for the American people and then just building on it link by link, just expanding the entitlement state little by little, right? And if they had a third of their conference all the way back to the 40s say, like, it's not everything, so I'm not going to do it, they would never have gotten to the point where they're at.
That's exactly right.
And that's, I think, the case that you made so effectively to your colleagues is, look, I want a balanced budget as much as the next guy.
I've got one.
Yeah, but you
couldn't get it on the floor I got it out of committee though.
No,
$14 trillion in savings.
But we did the math the other day. I mean, you could literally shut down the government in March and not reopen it until 2036 and not have a balanced sheet.
That's exactly right.
So the question is, how do you grow out of it?
Yeah,
that's what you've done.
No, you make a great point that I need to reiterate, which is, we didn't get out of the debt hole that we were in coming out of World War II in 1 year, 2 years. It was a couple of decades. And it was incremental and disciplined approach to putting in place those policies that would promote growth, because we got to grow faster than we're taking in the water of debt. That's when you talk about where do you start? Stabilize the debt,
Which also expands incomes, expands job
Absolutely.
opportunities.
Brings revenue to the Treasury, too. That's
right.
the whole dynamic scoring, right? Ultimately, you're right. You're getting people off of welfare rolls, on the payrolls, and people are making investment, creating greater job opportunities. Wages are going up. Yeah. But you're bringing revenue also to the Treasury, which is a part of our model for a balanced budget resolution. We're not going to add to the deficit. In fact, I believe the deficit will outperform our growth assumptions.
Oh, I have no question about that.
And we'll bring the deficit down.
I have no question.
But growth is a big part of it. I would say even foundational. And in time, if you have the right policies that promote and incent investment, job creation, growth, and all the things that we talk about that I think Republicans are actually very good at. It turns out we talk like we're good at spending cuts, but we're not. But we've got to exercise that muscle that's atrophied. We've got to restore that piece of that principle and that piece of the equation while we're growing, control spending, bend the curve on spending. There's a ton of waste, fraud, and better ways to manage the government.
That's absolutely right.
That in and of themselves and paired with growth will get us to a better place, to a more responsible level of debt to GDP, and we will be able to underwrite the next generation or two or three in terms of what they'll need to be secure and the transportation infrastructure that they'll need to have prosperity. So we can't do it in one fell swoop, not in one reconciliation bill, and it probably will take the same time span as coming out of World War II. But here was the reward. Coming out of World War II and doing those things and doing them consistently, we emerged as the only superpower in the world. Yeah. But to maintain that is even harder.
It is.
But that's why I think this is really, as I've referred to it, the Super Bowl for saving the country. Mm-hmm. This is the first big down payment, and hopefully success will breed success. We'll rinse and repeat, and we will have, and our values and America's influence will dominate the remainder of the 21st century. Man, that is what drives me every day. I may get choked up. I may get stinking choked up. Maybe I'm tired. Maybe, there was something in my cigar last night when I was celebrating. I don't know.
There's a changing in the guard here in Washington. There's a new generation of leadership that's emerging in the Republican Party in so many ways, and you're reflecting that. And I think to your point that you made earlier, it's because, look, we got kids.
We got kids
too. He has two. I have two. And we want to be good stewards of their future. And we know if we don't dig out of this problem for them,
that's right.
Let alone us.
Yeah, it ain't about feeling good.
Yeah,
what is it that we're doing here?
This is existential.
Amen.
Yeah.
I love it. My handlers told me that I needed to wear something that looked cool and laid back because y'all
pretty cool.
And then I come over here, I'm looking at a bunch of stiff,
No, I do.
I
love your quarter zip there, Blue Monster. I know that course.
Have you played it?
And I played Red Tiger as well, which is a great course.
We
played that on my bachelor.
Somebody thinks we're talking about Tai Chi right now, and we're talking about golfing.
Oh, they know. They know what we're talking about.
See, I'm a new golf guy, so I'm still.
And you played Blue Monster.
I did.
Wow, you're a brave man.
Well, I didn't tell you that I played well, but I did play it, and then I was fishing the ball out of every.
Spaghetti, we got to get Wolf. We're coming out with a new line of golf.
Are you on some gear?
Yeah, no, and it's this one is the Gaza Riviera, and we got that coming out. We got to make sure that this guy gets one of those.
That's going to be, first of all, very hot in West Texas. And you guys are great. I'm really.
Were you always into politics?
I was.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Did the trick on me.
He had the magic. This is fun.
He really did.
Fun and important.
You need the Reagans, right? I think it was Ted Cruz that told me that our generation, meaning he and I'm 52, but I don't know how the span of time, but he said our generation is referred to often as Reagan's children because he literally inspired a generation of people like us who felt like this is a noble calling. And America is the greatest country in the world, and we have this incredible responsibility, and it's worth fighting for, and all those things. And he was so inspirational. And then I had a great teacher in my first civics class, Miss Becky Taylor, and she made the whole thing come to life in her classroom. It's really the combination of those two things and a tractor salesman and my dad in a little town in West Texas called Plainview, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And he would get so exercised watching the news every night about somebody taking his tax dollars and, wasting it then as, if he only knew.
Right.
But I thought, how can a tractor salesman out here in the middle of, rural West Texas be that exercised over the things going on in this faraway land called Washington? And I just put it all together and said, man, this is important stuff.
Yeah.
And we got to make sure we have the right people doing the right things to keep this, I didn't call it the experiment in liberty and democracy at the time. I just said, we got to keep this dream alive. And so, that it started then. I never veered course. I feel like God planted the seed in my heart, and then sort of one step at a time moved closer to this very dangerous seat called the budget chairman.
Yeah, well, listen,
if I'd have known what was ahead of me, I would have gone into insurance.
Yeah, right. I mean, listen, we're glad you're here, and I think these important moments, it's important to have somebody who not only is a serious person but can relate to people across an ideological spectrum. I mean, we just heard that. I mean, what you're talking about is the entirety of that Republican conference, concerns that they have about both sides of this budget, and I think that's why you got home. If you don't mind, we haven't done this in a while, but every time we have a first-time guest, your last meal on earth, if you could plan it.
Well, I'm glad you weren't going to make me sing my high school fight song. I was like, where are we going with this? We haven't done this in a while, but take your shirt off, paint your face, come back in here, and
that's the second round.
Yeah, that's for the second round. It was nice being with you. That'll be my last trip. Nobody should see that, by the way. We're trying to project American strength.
For any of us, that would not be good.
So I'm a breakfast for every meal guy.
Oh, yeah?
Nice.
No.
Okay.
I can eat eggs. I'll cook an egg, put it on pizza. I'll put it in a sandwich, a grilled cheese. I love eggs every which way, but it'd be breakfast. It'd be eggs, bacon. I'd have some tortillas to make my own little egg tacos because I'm a Texan,
Yeah.
And that's our love language.
Oh, totally.
And
a little chorizo on that.
Yeah,
sucker.
a little chorizo on that. Yeah, now you're talking. God, I've lost. Where are we now? Where are we?
Fire up the skillet.
Fire up the skillet. Yeah. So that's where I live, right there.
I get it.
In that happy place. And I'm supposed to be like a guy that walks into a cotton gin and's like, anybody got any coffee? I mean, it needs to be stuck to the bottom of the cup. It's black,
like oil.
Like oil, and then it's like, and maybe a cigarette or something. Even a used one, just give me. But instead, I'm like, does anybody have any tea latte, some honey, London fog ring a bell to anybody? So yeah, I am a next generation West Texas guy.
There you go.
Who did some farmhand work, whose dad sold tractors, but who likes a good tea latte, I guess, and some egg burritos with chorizo. So
I love that.
What does that mean?
Well, we're going to find out because we got two quick ones. The second one, and this is sort of a rapid fire because I know you got to get out of here. If you had the benefit of just looking back on life, knowing everything that you've accomplished to this point, which is considerable, and you could do anything. Literally, like Cruz came in here and told us he'd be a power forward in the NBA. So it doesn't have to be practical, obviously, But if you could do anything in life, what would it be?
God, you know how cheesy this answer is?
I can't wait.
I'm sorry to say this because I know you want something else, but like, I am living my dream. I am living my dream. I'm telling you guys, God is my witness. Like, I can't believe I get to be a leader for my country and I get to wave the flag and champion everything good about America, fight for everything good about America, and I do it every day. And I'm living my dream job. My wife knows that. If she watches, she knows. She's like, yeah, this is like how he was wired, what God called him to do. But if I didn't, then I'd want to. I walked on at Texas Tech as it's good big school, Division I, Big 12, and I'd never played football in high school. So I didn't.
What, it's just like you're big?
The only thing I knew how to no, it is kind of weird. I actually thought, I played sports in high school, and I played football growing up, but I was a tennis player.
Oh.
And to this day, my dad said I was the best tennis player to ever walk on the football team at Texas Tech. And I talked to one of the coaches, Doyle Parker's not with us anymore, but he interviewed all the walk-ons, and I remember I was into weights, and I thought I was athletic enough and big enough at the time that I could do this, and I didn't want to say that woulda, coulda, shoulda. I mean, better to do that in junior high, and then even if not then high school. Not
well, when you're 18, you think you can do anything.
Yeah,
right?
well, that's what I thought, and then
you find out.
So then Doyle Parker, Coach Parker says, "Okay, we'll check this. You got your physical. You got the. So tell me, what did you play in high school? Obviously he's referring to the position on the high school football team. I'm like, tennis, and he nearly fell out of it. And I think just to run me off early, put me with the linebackers.
Oh, God.
And then it was all downhill. I got to play one red and black scrimmage.
I thought you were going to say he's going to make it cover Michael Crabtree.
Well, that wasn't going to happen. It didn't. I didn't go that far for that long, but I did break my finger in the ear hole of a guy in the last play of the red and black scrimmage. But in my mind, I thought, this is going to be like a Rudy moment. Like, I'm going to make the tackle, pick up the ball after the fumble, run it all the way. And I'm just like, I had all the dance moves down ready. And instead, they carry me like off the field. And with your finger. Yeah, and I'm like, Mom, hi, Mom, love you. And that was it. But so I guess it would have been, if not this, that I would have been the Rudy of Texas Tech. And, there would have been a book written about how this country boy who played tennis decided to walk on and became a, All-American linebacker.
I love that. I mean, it goes to our last box check, which is we always say that every successful person is motivated either by the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat. And it's not that anybody enjoys losing, and it's not that anybody doesn't enjoy winning. It's like what motivates you to go to the next level. And if you think about that question in terms of yourself, it's been an amazing split. We've had 400 guests on this show, and it is almost a dead even split of one of the two. And everybody sort of internalizes it when they think about it, and they say, like, yeah, I guess it's this. What do you think it is for you?
Man, these are great questions. I really think it is equal parts fear of failure and the dream.
If it's fear of failure, if it is equal parts, you are a negative defeat guy.
That's a good analysis.
It is, because
nobody gets equal parts like that. It doesn't work. One is greater than the other. As soon as you think it, you're that guy.
You're that guy.
Well, then I would say it's fear of failure, fear of losing the country, fear of letting my children down, fear. So,
you're in good company, sir.
Should
It's
I
Michael
lay down
Jordan.
while I have the next when I do the next interview?
It's Michael Jordan, Nick Saban, Tiger Woods.
Really? They're in that camp?
Yeah, they're all.
We're like the Dr. Phil of this.
Yeah.
Well, as long as I'm in that company, then
hell,
I'm terrified of failure. I'm so scared of it. I'm not sure we'll ever get that reconciliation bill.
But it's true, because it's that fear of failure isn't just failure for us. It's failure for our kids and our kids' kids.
That's right.
And so that can be a great motivator, and I'm sure that was a motivator for what y'all did last week.
Yeah, totally. Listen, this has been a blast. You are welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Help walk us through this next process with reconciliation and everything else.
Yeah,
Your
let's
team's
do it.
great. We get a lot of good information, but you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, guys. I've enjoyed this. A great break in this crazy schedule, and sometimes too serious.
Yeah.
It's serious work. It's important work.
Gotta have some
but
laughs.
we're people. We need to laugh. And thank y'all for your service over the years.
Yeah, of course, you bet.
And I look forward to coming back on. No more questions. So no more psychological analysis. I don't want my constituents to see that deep into the recesses of my soul.
We'll get the shirt off next time. Jodey Arrington, ladies and gentlemen.
Dude, he's a whale of a guy.
He really is. I mean, so I didn't know him. I knew of him. Always appreciated his work, but we got to spend time with him. We spent like an hour with him, talking about a whole range of things. Really smart, totally grounded. This is the dude like just lives in his district, right? His whole mindset is not like some beltway. We're just getting jobs, getting deals done here, and I'm a deal guy. Like he does the work that his constituents send him to do.
And I really like the idea of a guy who's running budget,
Yeah.
being a guy who knows, like, I got to take care of not just my generation, but my kids and my kids' kids. Because, like, you got to have people who are grounded, care about their constituents, and are thinking about the future. It's not all numbers. There's real people that this impacts.
Yep. A really, really good interview. So glad he came on. I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more of that guy because he's welcome back to the old program anytime. With all of that, folks, remember to like and subscribe while you're there. Check out some merch. We might have some new offerings. When do we get these new offerings, by the way? Old Drew has got, I was told that we had some new golf stuff coming. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
We're going to have to get
I'm pretty excited about this new golf stuff.
I'm very excited about it. That's why I'm bringing it up. I hope he listens to this and feels some shame.
Maybe by the end of the week.
Yeah, maybe by the end of the week.
If he has the courage to do the right thing.
So like and subscribe. Check out the merch. We might have some new stuff coming. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And with that, I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode. Gentlemen, thank you so much to the minions. Like Holmes said, like and subscribe. Thank you so much, Chairman Arrington. So until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay ruthless.